Take 5. 5 questions to authors and artists. With a common question, we get a personal perspective on what shapes their views. Good morning, Andrea di Robilant. Welcome to Audiobook Radio.
Thank you.
Now, I know you've recently published Chasing the Rose. Just give us a little bit. What is that about?
Well, Chasing the Rose is going to come out in the spring. It's
Right.
not out yet.
Okay.
My last book was Venetian Navigators, which came out a year ago, and was the story of these two Venetian brothers who sailed to the North Atlantic and had all sorts of adventures.
Based on fact. I mean,
Based on fact, yeah. So Chasing the Rose instead is going to be coming out in the spring, and it's the story of my search for the identity of a mysterious Chinese antique rose that I found growing in the woods near Venice. And so it's the story of trying to figure out how it came there and what the story was behind it.
there's a lot of travelling, a lot of searching. It just seems that's a constant theme.
I think, yeah, it is a constant theme. I think it's a bit of a habit that came from just being a reporter for all my life. And so digging and searching and trying to come up with a good story.
Well, here on Audiobook Radio, we do a strand called Take 5,
Yeah.
where I'm going to ask you 5 questions.
Okay.
They can be short or long answers, and just basically a little bit about your own. We're searching for a little bit of history. So the first question is, what book most inspired you to write?
Ooh, well, I guess in the end, Hemingway inspired me the most. I say Hemingway with a heavy heart because I think he's an author that's full of flaws and a man full of flaws. But at the end of the day, I think I remember quite vividly the sort of strong reaction I had to his writing, in the sense that and feeling very strongly, this is something I'd like to do. This is something that really I wish I could do the same. And I was about 18 years old. I was living in Kathmandu then, and I just went through maybe it was the distance from home or something. It had a very powerful impact on me. I was alone, living in a foreign land, and it was just a link to my culture, and I just remember it having a very powerful effect and giving me the impression that writing was a possibility.
So it was definitely the writing it evoked rather than the kind of content. Like it wasn't.
No, it was
the sort of
both.
story
It
that
was
made you
both.
want to
It
be
was
a
both.
man.
It was both. It was the writing, the accessibility of the writing, the extraordinary ease with which he seemed to write, which of course wasn't easy at all. But the effect of the language was very powerful. But also the content. I mean, the books he was writing and which I was reading from a great distance from home were about Europe and about Paris, about Italy, and so I think that too had an impact on me.
And is there something in the way he writes? Because the next question I was going to ask was, what book do you most wish you had written?
Well, I think for that I have a very specific answer. The book I would have liked to have written was Robert Byron's The Road to Oxiana. To me, the greatest travel book ever written, and a book that certainly inspired me, and certainly made me in a way very envious of his capacity to write that book. I thought it was a book that really deeply affected me, but also very specifically answers the sort of things that I like to write about, which is travel in this sort of very creative, serendipitous, entertaining, and yet at the same time meaningful, deep way. Robert Byron did that exceptionally well in that book, and I think that's why it's a book that has influenced so many generations of travel writers. But yes, certainly that's the book I would have liked to write.
Are there any topics or content or subject of any form that you think doesn't belong between the covers of a book?
Well, it depends how they're treated, basically. I mean, in general, no, I don't think there are any topics that shouldn't belong to a book. Let's make the example of hateful literature. I mean, if you write it in the form of a pamphlet, then you get into issues of freedom of speech, and so it's very difficult to say no, that doesn't belong to a book. Then, if you introduce these themes in different forms of literature, for example, in novels, and you have characters who are hateful characters and so on, that's a different issue. But I don't think that it would be right or appropriate to say that they don't belong. No, I don't think self-censorship is good in any situation I can think of right now. There might be exceptions, but I can't come up with them now. And so as a general rule, I'd say no, everything is open, everything is available. A book is a book, and you should be able to write anything in it.
Okay, moving to a slightly different subject. So is there any book that you would like somebody, on the basis that it's a voice that you really like, actually read to you?
Well, one of them is maybe Remembrance of Things Past by Proust, simply because I've never been able to read it all myself, and I might need someone's help to read it to me.
Yes, someone else could maybe interpret it and kind of make it sing for you.
Yeah, and just keep me going. Yeah, that would be lovely. If not, really, I think in my mind, to be read the Iliad, to be read the Odyssey is probably, I think, would be the greatest gift anyone could give me.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's a very long
That's
book.
Yeah, long.
Yeah. And then finally, in the days before print, would you have been a storyteller?
That's an interesting question. Yes, my immediate answer is yes. I've always loved telling stories. I can remember just entertaining the family at the table with stories and just enjoying the possibility of putting together stories to tell. So I think, yes, there was something in me that there was something of the storyteller in me from the beginning. At the same time, I do think that after 30 years of writing stories, real stories for magazines and newspapers, it does come second nature to you, and you have a tendency to look at the world through the eyes of a storyteller and just picking out threads and looking at reality in terms of stories. And that, I think, is the legacy of my profession. And so these two things are both present. And so it is difficult to say whether... Certainly there was something of the storyteller in me from the beginning, but I do think that this tendency has consolidated over the years through my profession, and it really comes second nature to a journalist, and to just see the world through stories.
Do you think there's any way that you would find it easy to kind of hustle an audience? Because the thing about storytelling is you might have the capacity to tell the story.
Yeah.
But how do you engage people to actually be interested?
Well, that's something you have to like. I mean, I like talking to audiences. I like getting them excited and going, and so whenever I have the opportunity to engage with sort of a larger group of people, telling them the stories I write, I do like it. I mean, I do, and I guess one transmits a certain enthusiasm. One has to believe in the stories one writes. Then, of course, there's a certain degree of theatricality always, and one must also enjoy that, a bit of theater. You have to be able to be good at it and to enjoy it, to tell a story.
Wow, Andrea di Robilant, we've certainly enjoyed your story today.
It was nice to talk to you.
Thank you very much.